I'm so excited for this weekly conversation. You're one of the people I enjoy talking to the most. Based on your background, everything that you've accomplished, this will be our first conversation, but not our last weekly
Hmm.
conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mike.
Of course. How are you?
Doing well, staying busy. It's a busy season here at Superior Fence and Rail. So the
I
good,
love
the
to
good
hear
kind of
that.
busy though.
Tell us about your business today, and then I want to go back to earlier earlier chapters.
I'm Kyle Brinks, a co-owner of several franchises of Superior Fence and Rail. Me and my brother-in-law started the original franchise of Superior Fence and Rail in Grand Rapids in 2020. Then a couple of years later, about a year and a half later, actually, we expanded into the Kalamazoo market with a third partner. And that business has taken off. And most recently, we started Superior Fence and Rail of Lansing with that third partner and strictly run by a general manager at that location. It's been a really fun yet challenging journey. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But we continue to ramp up the complexity and scope of the operation despite those challenges.
For those of you that are watching, listening along, I'd encourage you to kind of go to their Yelp pages, go to their Google pages, take a look at it because the business that you've built has not only been incredibly successful so far and continues to grow, but you really care deeply about these communities and you're serving them to your
Hmm.
best of your abilities. And it's I continue to cheer for you. I think you're one of the most
Hmm.
humble people that I know. So we got to kind of hit the fast forward button. Obviously, we've been friends since 2004, so past the 20-year mark of our friendship. Coming back to our graduation year in 2008, obviously you're in ROTC. Talk a little about your early kind of post college career, your military career. I'd love to hear about that point of your life.
Yeah, so did ROTC, which is a career pathway to become an officer in whatever branch of ROTC you're doing. So I chose Army ROTC, which led me to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. And then upon graduation, you get commissioned as an officer in the Army. So you start at the rank as second lieutenant. And immediately upon graduation, like you get thrown into the fire, right? We did your training. Now here's your opportunity to lead. So my first job in the Army, I was a platoon leader of a group of between 30 and 35 guys. And I had my non-commissioned officers that helped run that platoon. Most of those guys had 12 to 15 years in the Army, and here I am, several days in the Army, and I'm expected to lead this group. So it was a very humbling experience to be in charge of not only that many people, but also people with far more experience than me right out of the gate. I did a total of 12 years in the Army, and every job after that, the complexity got ramped up and the scope of responsibility definitely increased until 12 years later when I decided to get into the Army.
Another great example of your humility. You have the type of personality that really attracts people to you and your leadership style. You're a natural born leader. You're right there rolling up your sleeves. You're in the trenches with your
Hmm.
team. Obviously, it's not hard to see how that transfers to what you're doing today. If you don't brag about yourself, I'm going to have to brag about you. You're an Army sapper, you're an Army Ranger. Talk about
Hmm.
some of those accomplishments.
Yeah, I mean, so in the Army, I think it's a structured leadership environment, right? There's definitely career paths. However, you can do as much or as little as you want. There's opportunities to set yourself apart from your peers, opportunities to further your leadership experience and knowledge. It's up to you to jump on those opportunities. I sought those extracurricular activities, if you will, by going to those schools because I knew one, I would learn a lot, and both in the technical side and in the leadership aspect of the military. And two, in order to lead people, effectively, they have to respect, you're willing to do the hard work as well, right? And so that's one of the things that I've always focused on is like my guys that I've led throughout in the military and even this business, they know that like when push comes to shove, I'm willing to do the same hard work that I've asked them to do. And so by, wearing those tabs on my shoulder that said I graduated from these schools, like to some degree it shows that yeah, you are willing to suffer, you're willing to do the work to better yourself and ultimately like it does show that you are willing to do what it takes.
Again, very humble. Thanks for walking through that. Thanks for your service.
Mhm.
Let's rewind the clock. When did you get out of the military?
Got out the
2017?
first week, no, actually the first week of March 2020. So right as the world was shut
Oh,
down.
wow.
So perfect time to change careers, to venture out on your own. So
Talk a little bit about that, how you thought about what your next step. You had some opportunities, not only Fortune 500, but Fortune 50. Obviously, a military background has transferable skill sets to kind of a more corporate environment, but also a very entrepreneurial
mhm.
environment and kind of what you're doing today. I remember having these conversations and getting off the phone. I'm like, Kyle's got the tiger by the tail. Can you talk a little bit about kind of transitioning from a military career to a civilian career and kind of the emotions that went along with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to share my stories. Even when I started in the Army, I'm going to do this as long as it makes sense. About 10 years in, I'm like, okay, I've got a family now. I've got two young daughters. My oldest daughter is hitting grade school, and I knew that moving her every 2 to 3 years and uprooting the family was not going to be conducive to the type of environment I was trying to provide for my daughters. Started analyzing everything that, every opportunity that seemed appealing to me at the time. So, whether it was to start my own business, whether it was to get a job, in a Fortune 500 company through its own separate discussion in the Chick-fil-A operator pipeline, you know, you can tell not a Chick-fil-A owner operator, but learned a lot from that experience. My mindset was this is a major life decision for me, and I want to make sure it is the right one and one that I can see myself continuing for the next 20 years. Yeah, that so the emotions was this is exciting, but I'm going to do it right. Even if it's going to take me a little bit of time to figure it out, like I'd be willing to go through the struggle to make sure that I'm not just jumping at the first stable opportunity that's out there to make sure a paycheck's still coming in. So and it actually was about almost an entire year, 11 months between when I got out and when we first opened the doors to Superior Fence and Rail of West Michigan. Hmm.
I'm not going to take any of the credit for the hard work you've done to get your business to where it is today, but I'll take credit for introducing you to Freddie. One of
Hmm.
my classmates from Kellogg who went to West Point who introduced you to Zach and the rest of the team. So
Yeah.
I'll take this much credit. And I think I've given you this much in our relationship. You've given me this much. So not fair trade thus far. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say there's a couple people in my life who have just like nudged or made the introduction in the right direction.
I had an experience as a franchisee that went in a much different direction than your experience as a franchisee. So again, I think that speaks to your skill as an operator. I told you this our time together would go fast. What
Yeah.
advice would you give to your 18-year old Kyle Brinks from Grand Rapids, Michigan, going all the way back to 2003, 2004? What does that young man need to hear?
Yeah. So, I did have an opportunity to think about this question beforehand. I was like, man, is there any big things I would change and tell myself? And honestly, no. Like, from 18 to now, I'm very happy with where I am. There might be some small things I would have changed along the way, but I have confirmation of what I was thinking back then. So that advice would be like take chances and don't miss opportunities to forge your own path, right? Because like that introduction that you gave me to Freddie, which led me to this, like that was an opportunity that I took. And even going to Furman to do ROTC was an opportunity from a friend of mine from high school. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. Let's try that. Let's see where that leads. And that has opened the door to countless more opportunities. So,
So don't be afraid to take chances and be kind of confident and convicted in your decisions. Because as I think back to kind of, you met your wife, Erin, in
mhm.
2004 as an 18 year
Yeah.
old, right? So it's like you've been making great decisions ever since. That's great. Again, I think you're one of the most kind of pragmatic thinkers in my close group of
No.
friends. So I think
And
it's funny when you talk about being an Army Ranger was an extracurricular. Like the way I think you think of extracurriculars is very different than the way I've thought of extracurriculars.
yeah. To a generic 18-year-old, like something similar to that, right? Like, there's a statistic out there where 80% of people uh, end up around the same, pay scale as their parents, right? And so, one of the awesome things that I got to experience by going to Furman, like through that random introduction, like I had no business going to Furman, but it has opened the doors and I got a peek behind the curtain to all these kids that came from extremely wealthy families that were well set up. Like there's really no difference between you and I, and not to discredit them, but it's just like you have this allure of like these they're from a different class and they must be doing something different. Like, no, it really boils down to hard work and what you do with the opportunities in front of you. So, don't have a self-limiting belief that, where you are in life is where you're going to end up.
I love that because as you and I know, we've like swapped Dave Ramsey podcasts before and stuff like that. Like to borrow from his vernacular, you've changed your family tree. Um, and that's awesome. The way in which you talk about investing in real estate and just the way in which you kind of just approach legacy building financially and otherwise is really inspiring. How, I mean, then I guess to take it to the next level, then you lead a large team today. You've been leading since I met you at 18, even in ROTC. How do you want to be thought of by those that you've worked with and those that you've led?
He wouldn't ask us to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself, right? And so I think that goes a long way, especially with leading, the type of guys I'm leading here in Superior Fence and Rail. They're ultimately the same types of guys that I led in the Army, where they come from various backgrounds. They follow people they respect and show that you're not just some guy sitting behind a computer telling what to do, but you're willing to sweat and bleed with them. My business hat, like, I would like to be remembered as a guy who led with intentionality throughout the process, right? Was never shooting from the hip, always was like thinking a couple steps ahead and smoothing out the wave tops to ensure that, the growth behind it was smooth and planned for to some degree.
I'm ready to join your team. I'm really interested to see where you take this question. What's one core value or principle that's critically important to you?
There's one that stands out, and it's cool because my wife says this too, and she says the Brinks always do what they say they're going to do, right? And if the Brinks are going to say yes to something, like you can guarantee it's gonna get done. I'm gonna get it done, and I'm gonna be proud that my name is on it at the end, right? In the end, if it's something that my heart isn't into, like I'm not gonna say I'm gonna do it just to appease the person I'm saying it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we do what we're saying we're going to do.
Do what you say and say, yeah.
No, otherwise you're lying. If you're just telling people I'll take care of that, and you have no intentions, then you're a liar. And then people trust you
Yeah.
less.
You talk about marriage being kind of the ultimate partnership and all those types of things. The way in which you and Erin complement each other. I love the fact that you give her credit for the fact that she says that all the time. I can hear in Erin's voice her saying that. And I very much believe you in that regard. We went way over time. I thank you so much for
Mm,
being so generous with your time. We're
yeah,
obviously going to have follow up conversations. It's I think we ended on such a high note. The Brinks always do what they say they're going to do. Like to me, that's the title of our weekly conversation. Kyle, I love you. I wish you nothing but success. Thanks for hopping on. Talk
yeah.
to you soon.
Thanks so much, Mike.
All right. See you, bud.